So I asked out on Discord and heard back from at least one of you that you wanted to see my completed CRUD operations for using the class implementation. Remember, you do not have to implement the update if you don't want, but I'll give you how I approached it and how I got it done. So right now, the operation is completely done, the function completely done in classes with only a few things happening up in the app.js. I'll cover this in a minute. As before, I guess I'll cover it now. I have suggestions um, is my first class, and then my second one is the data store. And so, functioning wise, now again, here's what I probably should have said last time more clear. I took my Learn Together, you're going to take your Dev 1, not your Learn Together code, and do this to it. I could totally do it to my Dev 1 as well. I think I actually might just for the experience. So, of course, the create works, right? The delete works. I'll show you that in a minute. The other thing I did is I got the CRUD working, and this is, you want to make sure you've done to do a complete CRUD operation, create read. Now it's happened. It's out on local storage. It's listed out there. And then what you'd want is when you hit delete for it to delete, but when you do some kind of update to it, so like in this case, I don't give the user the ability to update any of the items, but I do give them the option to rate it. And if they rate it before, I actually had it go away, but I decided not to do that, which means I need to take off this content. But if I hit submit, what happens is it actually changes the background color. So one of the things I'm going to do is put a little legend showing that, the color indicates if it's been rated or not. But more importantly, when you click back in here, you actually see the rating that was selected. And that's important to have all those CRUD operations working, FYI. Okay, so how did I do this? So for my app.js, if you remember before I had this morning task, I took that off and I just and this will have to happen on the load pages for both my main index page and if you have a sub page or a edit page. But I'll need to declare or set up, instantiate the new data store. The data store is where I handle, of course, the local storage and all the rendering. Okay, and the show suggestion is where I actually create in here in the submission and I process the suggestion and then I hand over this. Ooh, there's a jet passing over. Oh, well, I wonder if that came out on video. It was hugely loud. Anyway, so the suggestion, I create, instantiate a new object here, I process it, and then I render it. So the thing that made this work was over in the classes, when I set up the new data store, I had a constructor that runs when I call new. And the constructor that I used was basically what we'd used before with get save suggestions. I did have to modify it a little bit and I need to put back in the try catch block for now. Anytime you call new, you just go out and get a new or get whatever is in local storage. And that worked fine. And then the save suggestions were there as well. Okay, so that's how I handled that. And it sounds so much easier. It did take me a while to kind of wrap my head around how I would approach that. So, having said that, I did bring over also the delete, right? Now, one thing about the delete, I will tell you, and this actually relates to the week we're coming into, which is the event loop, because on my remove, which is right here that I set up an event listener here down on render. Okay, so again, I've talked to you about how I did this function using a function on the event listener on the click. When I did that, my remove, because in this case the event loop is done, right? So when I click this, the whole page is loaded. The this variable no longer exists. So on my remove, I actually had to tell it data store because the data store reference is still there, right? So if I was to do data store, of course, on page load, it's still there. But on my remove suggestion, and this is what we're moving into, in a sense, it's an asynchronous task. Even though we're not going out to make a network call, it's still an asynchronous task in the sense that the page has already been loaded. The event loop, which I'm going to highly recommend you watch the event loop video I'm going to give you this week, has run so that this variable, if I wanted to say my array of objects, which I need to give that a better name. But anyway, that wouldn't work. I had to actually code it as data store. Everywhere else, I could use this variable because it wasn't through the event loop. So that caused me a minute to kind of wrap my head around as well, and just to show you that the delete does work. So that was the big thing, was that I had to um, do the constructor. And basically in the constructor, I did basically the same code. It just took me a minute to wrap my head around it. And then, like I said, there's really not much that's changed up in here except that I integrated all the rest of my CRUD operations I had done before. So ended up with two classes at that point. Anyway, that was my approach. I hope that helps you. Again, pay attention to the event loop because that could, if you tried to do all CRUD operations with OOP and JavaScript here with local storage, may bite you. But let me know if you have any questions.